And that is why you play till the buzzer sounds. The Avalanche did, the Oilers did not. And that is why the Avalanche are leaving Edmonton with 2 points. This very solid road trip continues, and we will talk about it. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on social media, LLPN_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. Make sure you're subscribed to our subtext as well. Lots of conversation going on over there. And when you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. We get your opinions on everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. All right, sir. If you look at a rundown, if you're watching on YouTube, we'll get to a very interesting poll that I put up on Twitter, which I'll say the results were a little bit surprising to me. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But where we absolutely have to start was the most recent game with the Avalanche over the weekend, and that is against the Edmonton Oilers. If by now, because we didn't do a show on Sunday, you haven't seen the highlights of that, I want to say pause this and go watch, or just listen to what we have to say about it, because it's absolutely epic. I mean, this is one of those classic regular season games that the Avalanche take because they didn't quit on a play where they easily could have. This was like that in Vancouver at the end of the second period. You could have just wrote it out, let the time go out, go into the locker room, figure it out. And no, at that game, Mikko Rantanen just throws a puck towards the net. And no, it's not. Devon Taves throws a puck towards the net. Mikko Rantanen tips it in. This, you're in overtime, and Nathan MacKinnon is chasing down a puck in the corner. Unbelievable play to kick it to himself off the boards, kicks it to his stick, just fires it right toward on the net, where Artturi Lehkonen once again buries the Edmonton Oilers in overtime, and he scores with half a second left. Avs get the extra point, and they're 3-0 on this road trip so far. Incredible game, which we'll get to all of it, but your thoughts?
And you know what? I'm going to deconstruct that backwards. 3-0 on the road trip, and where it counts. Like, when have the Avalanche gone 3-0 on the road, on a road trip? The road is usually the worst. And honestly, on this little trip, I think the Avs have played the best they have played all year when it comes to how they've handled Edmonton, Vancouver, and just, this is on the road. And that never say die attitude, that just gritty, never give up, that's refreshing for this Avalanche team. Like you mentioned, the Mikko goal. I thought the same thing watching that overtime winner. Like, they had no business fighting that hard in that moment. Just take that into the intermission for that Mikko goal, and you'll get him in the third. And that overtime winner for Artturi Lehkonen, you could see that half of the players for Edmonton were already had that mindset. How are we lining up for this shootout? Who's going to take on who? Like, you could just see like that. I mean, it's 0.5 on the clock. You don't think that's going to go in, especially for Nathan MacKinnon to do the skate to the stick. And it's just all of that sequence to line up that way. And another little fun fact, that's the first game the Avs have played against Edmonton all year. And we're getting close to, I think we have 17 games to go to the end of the year.
It's crazy.
And you have 2 more to finish out the series with Edmonton. But this was an incredible win. And this is exactly what you need right now for this Avalanche team. I am overjoyed.
You mentioned, half the players on Edmonton, I don't know how you phrased it, just like slowed up or just stop or quit. It's boils down to one guy, man. That's Leon Draisaitl.
Yeah.
He is a top 5 player in this league. Some would maybe argue top 3 player in this league. And he quit. And he quit multiple times in this game. You could trace all of those goals back to him quitting
Mm-hmm.
And that is the rub on him. And that is the big difference as to why, like, yeah, he has a Hart trophy and that, he's got some hardware. He doesn't have the big one. And when you do, and I don't watch a ton of Edmonton games. I watch some, but that seems to be like their problem with him is taking time off, taking shit. He completely stopped. He completely stopped for one. He stopped while Artturi Lehkonen got an extra skate stride in on him. That is all you need in this league. And if he hasn't learned that by now, what are you doing, man? You're just skating around collecting a paycheck at this point. Like, how much do you really want this? Because you're going up against a team that doesn't quit. The pace of this game, the entire pace of this game, you were seeing it on social media, like the bigwigs of the Greg Wyshewskins and Elliot Friedman's, they're all tweeting about this game. You're like, man, this game is at playing at a different pace than we are used to, and we are used to seeing other games played. And you have to know that being in that game, you're a part of it, and you let up for that split second. That is the beauty of this league. In that one stride buried you. And I'm sure he took probably a lot of heat from that in the Edmonton side of things. But dude, like it was just incredible all around how the Avalanche are the opposite of that.
Yeah.
The Avalanche have no quit. They play, and you've seen it now 2 games in a row on specific plays that are buzzer beaters, which buzzer beaters aren't a thing in the NHL, right? Like if you have a puck that's all the way down the other side of the ice, you can't just fling that thing 180 feet and hope it goes in. It doesn't happen like that in the NHL. But regardless, the Avs, they don't care. Nathan MacKinnon he's got a beat on a puck, and he's going to make that play even to see what happens. And if the clock strikes 0, okay, then what's up next? Up next is a shootout. But at least I can say I played that puck to the bitter end, and Artturi Lehkonen can say I made a beeline until the bitter end. And if nothing comes of it, fine. You're not in the doghouse from Jared Bednar. And look at the results. That is the difference to me right now. That is the difference between the Avalanche and many other teams, Oilers specifically, because they let up, and they should rightfully so getting taken a ribbing from their fan base and media outlets over there.
Honestly, you could take a step back on these two organizations. I remember not too long ago, we were looking at this Edmonton Oiler team, like, look how far out they are and the incredible push they had to get to this point. And it's one of those that feels like Edmonton's starting to run out of gas a little bit. And you can see that with the moves they made at the trade deadline. Not a lot of flair there. And then the Colorado Avalanche.
Henrique was a good pickup. But
it's par for the course for what Edmonton does year in, year out, and you get the same results for Edmonton year in, year out. And then the moves that Colorado made at the deadline, they're not like, you have your Sean Skywalker pickup, you have your Duhaimes, like you have these pickups that aren't really they're not the Henrique moves. They're not the Middlestat, maybe move the needle a little bit. But everything else, you're just kind of like, okay, you see it go across the crawl, and okay, I see what they're doing. It's depth. But in this Edmonton game, it's Sean Walker that has 2 goals, and we're on Hattie watch, watching him.
Mm-hmm.
And it carries you to that overtime. And then you have Artturi Lehkonen, another depth move from a couple years ago. This is how you put a team together around the talent. You can't just rely on McJesus to win everything for you. And Draisaitl is not your Mikko Rantanen equivalent. Mikko is another level. It's how you support your team. Organizationally, these are 2 different teams, and the Avalanche are performing at such a high level right now. Their little losing streak they had earlier in the year is hiding the fact that this team is catching fire at the right time.
They're exactly right. That is it. And you mentioned that this is the first game between these 2 teams. Okay, fine. Like that, the NHL scheduling is what it is. It's odd and weird. But you play this game in November, December, even January, you're looking at like, that's an entertaining game. it takes a different tone and different mindset when it's played now, halfway through March, and the playoffs are around the corner. And if you meet up with them in the playoffs, it wasn't that long ago that, hey, this happened. It wasn't like, you don't look at it and say, oh, 4 months ago that they played and it was a great game, but a lot changed since then. There was a trade deadline, injuries, whatever the case may be. This is more fresh in the minds of both of these teams, right? So I don't know. And by the way, for the people who saying like, I want 7 games of this, I don't. I don't want 7 games of that. I mean, I get what you're saying, and it was entertaining, it was fun. If it was 2 teams that I didn't root for, fine, I'll watch that all the time. This is just in a playoff series, that is just too much stress for me. Yeah. Regular season, I can handle it, but man, you get 7 games of that, it would be like how different was it watching these 2 teams playing it? Like these 2 teams are really on a different level in terms of their speed, their skill. They have a lot of skill guys on both teams. Obviously, it was fun. It was a fun game to watch. Avs had the lead. Edmonton gets it back in the third where the Avs match it. Then you go to overtime, and then what happened in overtime happened. But just from a sheer hockey watching standpoint, this was entertaining. This was an entertaining game. You saw, just the skill on both teams, and you saw how these teams kind of play differently than other teams in the league. And not surprising that it went into overtime because they're pretty evenly matched. But I would say the moves that the Avalanche made at the deadline really makes them, you're seeing it. And I know it's a small sample size. It's a few games in, but you just have a different feeling watching this team now. And I think this game really solidified it for me. Going into this one, it's like, okay, we it's been a good road trip so far. You went into Vancouver and you came back on them. That's a great win. Let's see, you have to do it again in Edmonton, and you did. So now, yeah, like I have a different feeling. It's almost that feeling you had from a couple of years ago, man, where you go into any game and you are feeling confident now, especially if you can get that goaltending from Georgiev.
Yeah, the magic's back, and that's what I took away from this game. The magic is back, and you have a confidence, and you have that little smile because it's not how are the Avalanche going to lose this one or going to let this one go. It's what are they going to do to win this one? What you saw in that Vancouver game with Mikko and this Edmonton game with Artturi Lehkonen and that Nathan MacKinnon highlight pass, you're anticipating the next one because this team is just as confident. And when you see the stats breakdown and the lines and the minutes they're logging, they're also doing this while resting and evenly distributing production. And that's exactly what you want. And this team, I'm telling you, Chris, I love that you said you feel that magic too, because I'm telling you, there's something about this team. It's starting to feel right.
And it's all the deadline moves. I think they hit the right notes, bringing in who they brought in for the deadline, because now you feel like it's back to that 4-line team that is difficult for anybody to handle for those 4 lines. Let's get into more of it. There's still a lot to talk about. We got to talk about, obviously, Alexander Georgiev played a fantastic game. So let's talk about that. We got other things as well coming up next. All right, first, let's hear from Robinhood. And did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? And with Robinhood, it has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on that 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. And this offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claims as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. And Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. And Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker dealer. All right. We also want to talk to you about, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best Major League Baseball season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. That's March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern. Be the first to get local insight from Major League Baseball local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. And I know Rocky fans maybe are like, why? But hey, come on. It's the start of a new baseball season. I always loved Mike and remember Mike and Mike.
Oh, yeah.
They would do this at the start of baseball season. They always had this funny like voiceover. And I was like, it's the start of a new baseball season. And here's the first pitch, and your season is over. And that really is like what it's like for Rockies fans this year.
Hey, in the words of the wise prophet JP from Angels in the Outfield, it could happen.
It could happen. It could happen. So either way, tune in. That'll be fun. All right, let's get back to this game between the Avs and the Oilers. I thought this was the most disciplined game of the year that the Avalanche played. Offensively and defensively, specific defensively. Yep. And I think it was, what the Oilers can do. The offensive ability that they have. And I think you took kind of like calculated risks offensively. If you had a lane, you took it. If you had a shot, you took it, but you were not going to blow an assignment. Right. You knew what your role is. You knew what your responsibility was, and you could not waver from it because McDavid is what he's otherworldly, and he can burn you. And he got his chances. He got a couple chances. He's going to. He's just Michael Jordan. He's going to create chances for himself, but you have to stop them, and you have to bury them the best way you can, and that is just sticking to the plan and sticking to your side. Don't waver from it. And I thought the Avs did a very good job of both being aggressive offensively, but not losing assignments defensively. And it worked to the tune of Draisaitl and McDavid had nothing, 0 points. And were they -5 total? I think they were. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I was about to mention. It was the flip. You remember talking about the Devils game where you said the Devils just knew where Colorado was going to be and they played them accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Colorado knew exactly what they had to do when it came to Draisaitl and McDavid. And that's no easy task. This isn't just any other team's first line. This is international superstars. And this goes back to what we were talking about in the first segment. This team is playing with magic and confidence. And you can see that top to bottom. And the defense is confident in their play. And I know I've been a big Georgiev detractor. Mm-hmm. There was no 1-shot, 1 goal. There wasn't a 2-shot, 2 goal. The goals didn't come till late. And this is, and also, they looked pitiful from the faceoff dot. Oh, yeah, so Georgiev was playing on his heels all night, and he stood up all game long. And I'll give him stick taps. That was an incredible game for him. That shows that he's got confidence. We always talk about why is it Georgiev lets in those early goals? It just doesn't feel like he's confident. You could see he's confident in the defense, and the defense is confident in him. And everybody's confident in the forwards right now. And that kind of play against that kind of talent, this is why you heard those comments about, I can't wait to see this team in a 7-game series. You're confident in this team to play anybody in a 7-game series. So, yeah, you want to see them get tested because this is what we've been so frustrated all year long when the Avs come up short or they lose a game or they just don't look, they just stumble their way to a win. This is the potential we knew this Avalanche team could have from the beginning. And they are finally hitting their stride. This is what you want to see, but the confidence to handle the assignment and leave McDavid and Draisaitl to a -5, that is bulletin board material for the rest of the year.
Exactly. And I even thought, because Oilers have some guys over on their side that like to mix it up and, maybe start some stuff. And they were. And the Avs, for the most part, were not biting. Sure, they'd get into, locking arms and stuff like that, but never went beyond that until it was okay with Josh Manson. It's like, no, I'm first of all, he didn't do anything wrong. Like he slams into Desjardins, who just was embarrassed because he got knocked on his butt. So he gets up and tries, wants to go after Manson, and Manson was like, fine. And Manson didn't respond until you ripped his helmet off. And then Manson's like, fine, let's go. And he paid the price for it. He and it wasn't like Manson knocked him to the ice and he stopped. No, he pulled him back up and went for a second round. And so, stuff like that, the Avs they're not just a team that you can walk over for stuff like that. But Manson they wanted nothing to do with it. But when you cross the line, fine, I'll man up to this. So it's stuff like that. Like I thought that was very disciplined for the most part. But when you do cross that line, the Avs are gonna fine. We'll cross it with you, and then make you look like a fool for doing so.
And that's a fantastic point, because this team is comprised of Corey Perry, Evander Kane.
Darnell
Nurse. This is a scrappy team. And all that said, we're talking about one incident with Manson where you can go either side of too far or not. There was one penalty apiece for both teams.
Yeah,
the entire game. So this speaks to the quality and level. We talked, Chris, you mentioned about the level of these two teams far above everybody else right now. This is that level. This is a professional respect and understanding on how to play the game at a premier level. And that's what you get to see Saturday night against in this matchup. And you hope that you don't have any more of these penalty problems that we had earlier in the year coming up, like going into the playoffs. But that was a huge takeaway, is even though the Avalanche did not come up with anything on their power play, they killed off the other power play.
Yeah.
So it's respectful, and you didn't have to unleash Duhaime. And that's what we said. Oh, this is the McDermott replacement. Didn't even have to get him out there to do anything.
No. So, we haven't even talked about Sean Walker really all that much yet, but these guys are fitting in beautifully. And you saw it with, you've been seeing it really since they've come over. They're that first game was, they didn't have a solid practice in. They still won the game, but you were looking forward to stuff like this. When you get some practice time in, when you get to know the guys, when you get to know the system, know what Jared Bednar wants you to do, and you're seeing the results from that. And you saw it from Sean Walker. Like this guy, you kind of feel like he's had it's just in my mind. It's like he's had conversation with Jared Bednar where Bednar tells him, go do what you want. Like, just because you're like, watch how our other defensemen play. And if you want to engage, and we'll cover you on the back end. And he just sits there and he's like, really? You want me to do that? Because I can. And he's doing it. And he is an offensive weapon, and he plays sound defense. I'm not saying we've forgotten about Bo Byram, but he's making the transition easy from how he's playing. I know it's short, but I think he's giving you more of what anything that Bo Byram has given you for the few years that he's been. Bo Byram was good for this team. I'm not trying to say, like, I'm not coming down on Byram. I was a fan of him. I was sad when he was traded. But if this continues for Sean Walker, we won't be thinking about Bo Byram. We won't be wishing he was still here, because what he offers the Avalanche, what he can do for this team is dangerous. And he showed it. He could have had the hat trick. He had the opportunity for the hat trick.
And I love the fact that you bring up that we're not comparing him to Bo. It's an impossible comparison right now. And I like that his nickname is becoming Skywalker.
This guy, yeah,
That's perfect. But
can't
you
beat
remember
it.
toys in the 90s where you would pour the putty into that mold and you used to make different color monsters? I feel like Sean Walker is
Yeah.
I feel like he's got like a bit of Taser, a bit of Kale, a bit of Sammy G's speed, a little bit of Bowen Byram's like grittiness, and
Mm,
I feel he's was perfectly scouted to be a little bit of everything they currently have, and he blends so well on this roster. He plays a good defensive game. He doesn't make boneheaded mistakes. He doesn't
mhm,
overcommit. He's not. He doesn't have a La Tornade. He doesn't when he's out there, he's quiet, like Taze and McCarr. Like, yes, he's talented, but he's not commanding your attention because of everybody else who's out there with him. He is one of my favorite players on the Avs right now. I know Casey Middlestad's up there, but
mm.
Sean Walker, he is really, really impressing me.
Well, he he's quiet until he wants to make himself known.
Yep.
And like, you just see it. Like, he had that one move where he's just running up the far side of the boards, and I remember who was playing defense on the Oilers just didn't have a prayer. I like that, how he is a little bit of everybody mixed into one right now
Yep.
for Walker. It's exciting to watch. And Middlestat is just, God, he's so good.
Yeah.
He's so, like, I watched a little bit of him in Buffalo. Not that I watched a ton of Buffalo games, but man, God, he is exciting to watch, and he has some sick puck handling skills. Sick puck handling skills.
And I'm glad for all of these new acquisitions because they are bringing back the quote unquote avalanche effect. That
Yeah.
still works.
Yeah. Want to talk about Georgiev. We didn't get to him yet, so we'll talk about him and then this poll that I ran over, very impromptu poll I ran over at Twitter, and interesting results. So we'll talk about that next. All right, let's hear from FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the NCAA tournament. And whether you're betting on a big upset or a number one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number one sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on the point spread money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. So just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down those nets. Kyle is excited for Auburn.
You betcha.
All right, let's talk about Georgie. Solid game. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but yeah, what you said before about him, about he didn't let in, obviously, that first shot, first goal, second shot, second goal. And that's when he can settle in. We can settle into the game, get into the flow of the game, and have not let anything in to that point. He's solid. Sure, you might get one past him or two past him, but when you don't have that first 3-minute goal given up, he still is, we talk about it all the time, right? He kind of will shut teams down and allow his team to come back. But when you're in the game, right, and you settle into the game and your team takes the lead, yeah, I know it shifted there in the third period, but overall, this is the type of performance I want to see from Georgiev, where you're playing solid all game long and you're making the other team fight to get a puck past you, which is going to happen. Right? You're not going to shutouts every single game, but you're making them work for it. And when you give up that first goal, it just changes the dynamic of everything. And this was a solid game from him from beginning to end.
Yeah. And this is exactly what you want to see, because his caliber. This is why they signed him. This is why they made it a big deal, why he came in as Joe Sakic's number 1A. And to see him not let up his usual goals and really add to the confidence that we were talking about in the first two segments, this is what you want. And we're not going to have the conversation on who's your 1A, who's your 1B, the Eustace and Georgie thing. Guess what? Look to your left, look to your right, look ahead of you. It doesn't matter. You don't have the power. We don't get to make the call, but you just know right now, whoever it is, you're going to be fine because both of them right now are playing at a really good, confident, reliable rate, which is what you ask of both of them. Eustace is a surprise. Georgiev, this is what you expect. So you are sitting in a really good spot right now when it comes to the goalie position. So just rest in that fact and let's not play the who's my starter, because it doesn't matter whoever's in there, you're all right.
Yeah, I mean, I say all the time, like, even though when it's a goal scorer's goal, and you sit there and you're like, yeah, that's tough for any goalie to stop. You would like him to stop those shots every once in a while. He did that. He did that in this game, and especially in overtime. Nugent Hopkins has a clear as day breakaway, and he stopped it. He stuffed it. And there was enough time for Nugent Hopkins to be on his approach for me to be like, oh, like this is it. This is it. And he stuffed it.
Yep.
That is what you want to see him do. They're not always going to be bangers. What's the Primus album? They're not always going to be zingers. But it's nice to get that from him in big moments. Not just, you get a really nice save early in the game, but in the moments that count where you can look back and be like, that clearly saved the game for them. And then, what happened in overtime happened. It's beautiful.
And you make saves like that, you fire up your bench because they're watching it too. And they say it and they see it and it's a let's go moment. And then you fire up the next line.
Absolutely. All right, we'll get to the subtext people tomorrow. They had a lot to say, obviously, on this game. So we're kind of in a little bit of a time crunch here. So we'll get to them tomorrow. We'll talk about the next game tomorrow. We'll do all that. The last thing I wanted to bring up today, Kyle, was a little bit sidetracked from the Oilers game. I put up a poll up on Twitter. I did it on Threads too. And at the time I put it up, Vegas was they I think they still currently do. They beat the Devils today. They were in the second spot for the wild card, right? The two teams chasing them right now are division rivals in the Minnesota Wild and the St. Louis Blues. So I asked the question, who are you rooting for here? Are you rooting for Vegas because you just have the hatred of the division rivals and the hated Minnesota Wild and the hated St. Louis Blues? Or are you rooting for those two teams because of everything that Vegas does and, how we, everything that we feel is a little bit suspect? Are you rooting for those teams that you hate, that you've hated for so long because you just can't stand to see Vegas? It would be hilarious for Vegas to miss the playoffs after all these things that they've done. The results, I'm a little bit surprised here, Kyle. I'm a little bit surprised at the discrepancy here. 92% of people who voted on this thing are rooting for the Wild or the Blues to knock the Vegas Golden Knights. I am too. Oh, your hand's up. So is mine.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, division rivals. It's ingrained. You just kind of hate the division rivals. Usually, it's just part of your makeup being an Avalanche fan, just like they hate us, right? But I don't always buy into that. And this is a time where I don't. Like, I have a genuine disdain for Vegas and how they operate and everything about that franchise. So I am with the people who voted for the Wild or Blues. I am shocked. It was 92% that want the Wild or Blues. And over on Threads, it was a little bit lower. It was 86%. Still high. What does this say? Are we softening up to the division rivals, or do we collectively just hate the Vegas Golden Knights right now as hockey fans?
The enemy of the enemy is my friend. And honestly, no one likes Vegas right now. And let's be real. Like, if you match up with Vegas in the playoffs, they could activate Wayne Gretzky off the LTIR at this point. It doesn't matter. They make up the rules. Like, and we're giving a lot of credit to the Blues and the Wild right now, but they're not here. They're not listening. They're not much of a threat if you match up with them in the playoffs. Come on. That's going to be
That you think that could be the other part of this too?
Yeah, that's they're not going to ruin your day. Vegas
Right.
could activate anybody and ruin your day and bounce you real quick. St. Louis, they're scratching and clawing to get there. Minnesota, the Avalanche have had their fun with Minnesota already. Why not
Yeah.
more? It's they don't scare me like Vegas, and it's not like Vegas scares me as a team. It's all the players they're going to activate or bring in or find under like in the couch cushions and say, "Oh yeah, he's a member of our team too. He's been hurt." That's just I don't want to get caught up in all that.
You bring up another good question. If it is, and I think you're right. I mean, I don't think Wild or Blues can catch them. And let's say the Avalanche get the number 1 overall seed and they face Vegas. A lot of people are like, oh, this Vegas team miraculously will have everybody come back. We all know that's going to happen. But if I'm the Avalanche, I'm like, I don't care who my opponent. The way that the Avalanche are playing right now, that's irrelevant to me. I think the Avs are right now playing like that, where it's like you can put whoever you want in front of us. And I think this Edmonton game goes a long way in that mindset of we can put anybody we want out on that ice against anybody you got. Doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter the team, doesn't matter where, when, whatever. Yeah, I think the Avalanche are that confident right now. So sure, when Vegas gets all these guys that come back, everyone's gonna be like, oh, watch out for Vegas. Well, number 1, they're just coming back from injury. 2, they've had new guys that really haven't played with them for very long, especially the who did they just pick up on San Jose? I'm drawing a blank there.
Oh, Tomas
Whatever.
Hurdle.
Tatar. Hurdle.
Tomas Hurdle. Yeah.
Tatar. Hurdle. So, he needs to gel with them. So it's not just, oh, these guys are back and Vegas is amazing. Where the Avalanche, these guys are getting valuable time right now. And man, if they hit the playoffs playing like this, I don't care who the opponent is. I am super confident. Doesn't matter.
And you want to watch the Avalanche become league heroes, knock those Vegas Golden Knights right out of the playoffs. You want to talk about adrenaline to the roof? It's cup or bust, baby.
Yeah, whatever team does, hopefully it is the Avalanche. I would love that bragging right. Absolutely love that bragging right to knock not only the division or the Stanley Cup champs out, but specifically Vegas.
Yep.
You will be the darling of the team of the fans who just watch to have Vegas lose. You will be the darling of the NHL. Absolutely, you're 100% right. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap it up. So great game, great weekend. So let's keep this thing rolling. One more win in St. Louis, and you sweep this road trip. Let's talk about that tomorrow. Ooh. Yeah. All right. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. Thank you for making it your first listen, and we'll see everyone tomorrow.